Hello everyone, my name is Holly Grant from CPA Australia and welcome to our International Women's Day 2026 live stream, Balancing the Scales, Shaping Inclusive Futures. Before I hand over to our panellists, I want to run you through a few housekeeping points. You'll notice that comments aren't available during this live stream, but if you'd like to ask a question, you can do so using the QR code that will appear on your screen throughout. We'll come back to those questions at the end of this session if time allows. This live stream has 1 hour of applicable CPD, whether you're participating live or watching the recording. If you are a CPA Australia member, there is no automatic CPD. You will need to add this to your CPD diary manually. For all others, please follow the directions of your professional body. The views and opinions expressed during this live stream are those of the individual presenters and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of CPA Australia. The content is provided for general information only and does not constitute professional advice. Now, finally, I'm pleased to let you know that moderating today's panel session is Rebecca Keppel-Jones FCPA. Rebecca is the Chief Member Operations Officer at CPA Australia, focused on delivering exemplary services across all of our divisions that's responsive to local needs. She's a proud FCPA, having worked in professional services in Australia, the UK and Canada for more than 15 years before joining CPA Australia in 2019. I'll now hand over to Rebecca.
Well, good morning or good afternoon to all attendees joining us today for this really important panel discussion on the International Women's Day's theme of balancing the scales. This is actually our first ever Global International Women's Day event for CPA Australia, and I'm incredibly proud to moderate this discussion. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the land on which I am based, and pay my respects to elders past and present. I also recognise and welcome people joining us from many countries and cultures, and thank you for gathering with us today. Balance the Scales is a promise that every woman and girl, regardless of background or identity, should be safe, heard, and free to shape their own lives. Yet in 2026, too many across the world are still denied that fair go. Discriminatory laws, policies, and practices persist. Gender-based violence remains widespread, and structural barriers block too many from seeking or receiving justice. These barriers are not inevitable. They are built, and they can be dismantled. Equality is not about advantage for some. It's about dignity, safety, and fairness for all. When women and girls stand equal, families are stronger, workplaces are fairer, communities thrive, and society becomes safer for everyone. This International Women's Day, let's balance the scales together. Now, I'm delighted to have 4 panellists joining me for the discussion today. Chris Freeland AM is the CEO of CPA Australia and a highly experienced leader across professional services. His career spans law, strategy consulting, and executive leadership, with senior roles at leading firms including Baker McKenzie, the Boston Consulting Group, Gilbert and Tobin, and King & Wood Mallesons. Before joining CPA Australia, Chris was managing partner and CEO of Baker McKenzie and later served as Asia Managing Director. He's lived and worked across Australia, Asia, and the United States, bringing a truly global perspective to leadership. Chris is also deeply engaged in the non-profit sector, and in 2018, he was appointed a member of the Order of Australia for a significant service to the arts, business education, and the community. Welcome, Chris. Next, I'd like to introduce Karina Wong, FCPA. He's an EY tax partner and Greater China tax co-leader and Greater China family enterprise leader based in Hong Kong. Karina has extensive experience in tax compliance, business restructuring, and complex cross-border transactions. She advises on mergers and acquisitions, inbound and outbound investment, tax due diligence, and the implementation of tax-effective strategies. She has many years of experience working with entrepreneurial individuals and families with a strong focus on ultra-high net worth clients. She's known for providing direct access to a highly personalised and comprehensive suite of advisory services. In addition to her role at EY, Karina is an active contributor to the CPA Australia community through her involvement with the Women in Leadership Committee in Greater China. Karina was also the president of the Greater China Divisional Council in 2025 and is still an active member of the Divisional Council. today. Welcome, Karina. Kim Goodair FCPA, who is currently working as a project manager for an SAP SuccessFactors implementation for Queensland Health. She's an accomplished executive leader with experience across professional services and government-owned organisations. She's held many C-suite roles, including COO and CFO, and brings extensive experience in governance, finance, and risk. She's a seasoned board-level executive with a strong commitment to ethical leadership, organisational performance, and building high-performing teams. She is also the chair of the Committee for Women in Queensland. And then finally, welcome, Kim. Finally, Jill. So Jill Brazil, CPA, is currently the Director of Corporate Services for the Shire of Derby, West Kimberley. She's a finance professional in the local government sector and a passionate advocate for diversity and inclusion. Her work reflects the diversities of the communities the local government serves, and she brings a strong practical lens to inclusion in the workplace. Jill is our chair of the CPA Western Australian Gender and Career Progression Committee, and is also a co-founder of the Diversity and Inclusion Network of WA. She's also a leading voice in raising awareness of the impacts of menopause in the workplace and the importance of inclusive, supportive organisational cultures. Welcome, Jill, and welcome to all of our panel for today's discussion. As a reminder, Holly mentioned at the beginning, if you'd like to ask a question for our panellists, you can do so using the QR code that has now magically appeared on your screen, and the panel will get to the questions if time allows. So to the panel, the first area I would like to address is understanding the systemic barriers that women face in accounting and finance. The good news is that at CPA Australia, we now actually have more females than males in the membership, which is driven by a significant increase in women joining the profession over the last few years. This shows us the profession is attractive to women and that we've created really strong entry pathways for women to enter the profession. However, structural barriers still exist in the more senior career stages, with uneven access to sponsorship, flexibility, and leadership norms. This continues to deny women's advancement into senior and C-suite roles. We see this in our data too. So we have an FCPA qualification. More than 75% of our FCPAs are males. And we also know that more than 2/3 of our C-suite roles across the membership are male as well. So for International Women's Day 2026, the gap highlights the challenge is actually not about attracting women to the profession. That's a great problem that we've solved. But it's about redesigning pathways to leadership so talent and not gender determines who leads. So I'm going to go to you first, Chris. From your perspective, what do you see as the most persistent barriers that continue to limit gender equity in the more senior positions in our profession?
Thanks, Rebecca, and it's a privilege for me, including as a man, to be part of the International Women's Day panel. I'm coming to you from Sydney, and because I hope there are many CPA members joining this webinar either live or later. We've got a newly refurbished Sydney office, which you can see in the background there. It's fantastic, and for Sydney-based members, please come in and use the space. It's your space. So you're right, Rebecca. I think it's a seniority problem. It's not an attraction problem. It's a progression problem. You mentioned the CPA figures, and that's reflective of broader society. There was an article in the Australian Financial Review yesterday, I think it was, quoting from the Workplace Gender Equality Agency in Australia, which talked about, it said that men are twice as likely as women to occupy the highest paid positions in Australia. And half of all employers pay men 30% more than women in bonuses, the research shows. There's a whole bunch of reasons, I think, which is impacting this. I do think linear career paths, which still exist in most organisations, favour men. So it rewards uninterrupted tenure and visibility over capability at times, and that disadvantages women, and including those with caring responsibilities. And given when, if women choose to have children, it's likely at a sort of a mid-career stage, which interrupts that tenure. So access to sponsorship, norms around what leadership looks like, and assumptions around 24/7 availability are just some of the things that are impacting it. At CPA Australia, we've just commissioned some research together with Chartered Accountants, Australia, New Zealand, with Monash Business School, which is surveying a bunch. I think we're going to do 50 or 60 starting in Australia, and then more broadly examining real life experiences and the challenges faced by women accountants, particularly those during mid-career. So that'll be a really valuable piece of research to supplement what we know already from the broader research in this space, some of those barriers.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Chris. And so, Karina, I mean, obviously you're based in Hong Kong, and so I'm really keen to understand how these challenges in senior leadership positions in the accounting profession, are they different in international regions, and what's your experience based on that?
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca. Based on my observations, challenges are quite different across regions. For example, many countries like Australia, in Europe, in the US, Canada, they offer extended parental leave or flexible working arrangements as a standard. However, this type of support at the workplace is still relatively limited across much of Asia, such as Hong Kong and mainland China. And instead of having the flexibility at work, younger parents here often rely on alternative support, for example, getting domestic helpers or support from older generations within the family. Having said that, there's still significant barriers to young female in Asia. Obviously, long working hours remain deeply embedded in professional services, and also the mindset around career commitment of women in Asia. And they tend to take on more household and caregiving responsibilities, and therefore many may opt for less heavily loaded career paths, particularly in mid-career and leadership levels.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's an interesting point on the parental leave, because I do think that has shifted in sort of more Western cultures probably only in the last 10 years. So I've got two children, 10 and 13, and when I was having children, we had fairly strong parental leave for women, but for men it wasn't so available. And I have seen a significant shift, I would say, in the last 10 years in Australia in particular, but probably more in Canada and the UK as well, about having access to parental leave for male partners as well. And so it is hopefully a shift that Asia can start to move toward, because I do think that's probably made a significant difference in some countries to have greater access to parental leave. But I sort of take your point around it's not just the parental leave portion of having a baby, it's all the other stuff that comes beyond after that, right? The caregiving is a real challenge, and that's a challenge from a barriers perspective for women in particular. So Kim, I might go to you next. So have you seen any shifts in recent years, and where are the gaps that you see that still matter for us to close?
Okay. I have definitely seen a slow increase in the number of senior leadership roles held by women. I'm also seeing more women supporting women, whether that's through role modelling or mentor programs, whether that be formal or informal. And also, as CPA Queensland's Committee for Women does, we choose female speakers, female entrepreneurs for our events. But the biggest barrier is childcare. Women still take the majority of the load when it comes to children, and usually that also includes running the family, potentially caring for aging parents, and everything that goes along with that. This results in so many women having to step out of the workforce for years, struggling to get back in, having to take a lesser role just to get back in. You see a lot that drop back to part-time, and that minimises their opportunities going forward. They don't feel they can step into a more senior role, potentially, because they don't feel they can juggle everything. And if you throw perimenopause or menopause in there when women are at their peak, there's not a lot of good news in this area. The issue is, until fathers take a 50% share of the child rearing, family and household responsibilities, there'll always be a barrier for women.
Yeah, I definitely can agree with that, and I think even having that conversation with your partner can be challenging, because we've got these societal norms which have, created these, practices that the women sort of all, the females all step back. And it's interesting because, when you look at university placements and higher education, women are taking more proportion of higher education, and so we're certainly seeing an educated workforce. But the challenge is absolutely when people start to have a family, or, as you say, when people start to have caring responsibilities for parents and become, they become that sandwich generation. It does tend to be the woman that takes on that role, and some may choose to take on that role because that's important to them. But I guess what we need to do is make sure we've got those structures in place to enable those that have made a decision that's not the societal norm to enable that. So yeah, very good point on the childcare.
And also when you add to the fact that not only is that there are traditions associated with women taking the lead when it comes to childcare, accounting and finance are also quite a traditional stream as well. Again, adding to the challenges in those traditional norms.
Yeah. All right, well, Jill, you are coming to us from a very regional location, a place I hadn't heard of before, so it's always interesting to learn new places in Australia. So you're coming to us from Derby in Western Australia, and you're obviously working in a local government role. And so I'm keen to understand how the barriers persist in both local government, but also the challenges in a regional location for women moving into more senior roles.
For sure. Thank you, Rebecca. And firstly, I'll say everybody needs to come to the Kimberley. It's gorgeous if you haven't experienced it. Get here, especially to Derby. Don't forget Derby when you get here. Look, I've been in local government sector for 19 years now, and it's always been a male-dominated industry in the leadership space. We have 139 local governments in WA with a 20% female CEO ratio. Now that is up slightly from 15% in 2021, but it's lower than in Victoria, where they're 35.4%. And that was really interesting to me. And I think that is because local governments in Victoria must report their gender impact statement to the Commissioner of Gender Equality. So I think having that statutory reporting environment actually really helps progress the barriers, overcome the barriers. But in local government specifically, one of the big barriers I say for reaching that CEO level is our council meetings are predominantly held in the evening time, right? So evening time, what if you're in a caring role, whether it's kids, parents, or you just want to have that flexible work-life balance, evening time is not ideal to having to stay in a council meeting maybe until 9 p.m. So you have a full day. And it turns a lot of people off because like Kim was saying, all the added responsibilities we have, it's like, that is a huge barrier. People say, well, I can't do it. I can't be a CEO because I have family commitments and I need to be home in the evening time to look after the kids or whatever other obligations we have. I think that's the biggest one we have, that being the council meetings in the evening, and it's a very heavily male-dominated leadership space, and to break through that can be hard. And that additional layer of living in the regions, lack of childcare spaces is huge for us, and there's a huge shortage of skilled diploma level childcare workers. And we've seen it so severe that childcare operators are offering FIFO roles. They're offering fly in, fly out, they're offering housing accommodation just to try and get people to the regions. We see only 1 in 10 children under 5 are actually enrolled in early years education in the regions. And that's the second lowest rate in Australia. And it's actually below the national average. So, and that in itself, if you can't get a childcare space, if you're working in the region, you don't have family around, what can you do? You can't keep progressing. It's just one of those barriers. And yes, that's a systemic barrier, but it's definitely one that needs to be recognised.
Yeah. And it sounds like, I mean, obviously regional areas probably heightened challenge, but I mean, Karina, you talked about it as well. Kim, you've spoken about it, and I know I'm based in Victoria. I know it can be really challenging, even in the sort of metropolitan areas, and so it does, and I think also the cost of childcare as well is really high, and so often when you're making decisions whether someone goes back to work. And we know, based on the WGEA report, Chris, that we know that, there's a gender pay gap. There's that kind of trade-off between sending, your wife going back to work, the woman going back to work, and the cost of the childcare sort of outweighing almost the income that someone's making. And so it's childcare, it's the cost of childcare, it's the availability of childcare that creates such incredible barriers for women returning to the workforce. But we also know that if we don't return to the workforce moves on, and then that puts us in an even more challenging position, particularly in this current environment where things are changing so rapidly in the accounting industry with the AI and the sustainability. And so, we certainly want to encourage women to stay in the profession, whatever way that looks. But it's a challenge for those barriers that you just talked about. So I guess barriers is one thing. The question is then what do we do to overcome them? And so I guess I'm looking to all of you, Karina, Jill, Kim, to sort of share some examples of initiatives or systemic changes that you've seen that are working, they're making progress, or potentially not working. So if you've got some examples of things that organisations have tried, that would also be really interesting to see. So we can start to dismantle, as we say, these systemic barriers. So I might go to Kim first.
Great. I think flexible working, which we see most prominently as working from home, thank you, COVID, one of the few good things about COVID, has made a huge difference for women juggling these many roles that they hold. Unfortunately, with many corporates mandating or considering mandating the return to the office, women have the most to lose here too.
Yeah, it's a very, very good point. Jill.
Rebecca, you might be sorry you asked me this question because I have a lot to say on this.
That's good. We want that. Yeah.
So speaking from experience, we all know we're here because we've seen that there is barriers. And one of the best changes and my favorite things I've seen implemented in the workplaces, including at CPA Australia, is organisations becoming menopause-friendly workplaces. And I've seen a few local governments come on board and do this as well. And that's about supporting people through this natural phase of life so they don't leave the workforce and they can continue on their career journey. And we know that, as Kim was talking about, that phase of life, perimenopause symptoms can start around 43 when a female is at the height of her career. She's just getting there, right? But at the same time, you might have caring responsibilities, childcare responsibilities, you might have aging parents, you have all this other stuff going on in your life without having perimenopausal symptoms impacting you as well. And we know from research that 70% of people experiencing menopause do not feel comfortable about talking about it in the workplace. So if you're not comfortable, if you don't feel supported, what are you going to do? You're going to end up leaving the workforce. And we also see that 73% of people say that stress is more prominent during perimenopause. And if you have a stressful job and perimenopausal symptoms on top of it, it's not helpful. Sorry, I'm still here.
Yeah, we can.
So from experience, there was a period there where, oh, sorry, we're back?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Back?
I don't know if she can hear us.
Okay. So for a period there, I had three colleagues, three female CEOs leave the space. And I thought, what is going on with them? So I didn't know all the reasons, but one of the girls said to me, it's a really hard role. And knowing perimenopause was on the horizon, she just couldn't face it. So she knew she didn't have that support to actually keep going in the role. We see also that 44% of a survey of 1,000 women cited that their self-esteem was lower during perimenopause and menopause. So that confidence to go for the extra role, to keep going, it may not be there, and without the workplaces actually understanding what people are going through, they don't feel supported in their role. But I have to say that programs like what CPA Australia are undertaking with Menopause Friendly Australia and other local governments as well, I can see differences. I can see it happening, and I can actually see that conversation really progressing. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill. And I might just pick up on that. So, I mean, I think there's a bit of a thread. So women are the main child caring responsibilities, but obviously face some other challenges as we get more senior in our careers through menopause. And so I guess the solutions to the challenges are multifaceted. So it's not just, providing flexible work, it's then having policies that support women at different phases of their career and different stages of their life. So it's got to be a multifaceted approach to support, to break down some of those barriers. Karina, from your experience coming over in Asia, have you got some examples of things that you've seen that have worked really well?
Yeah, I'm very pleased to see gender parity is increasingly recognized as a business or governance commitment, particularly through ESG initiatives adopted by some larger corporations. In Hong Kong, for example, the Hong Kong Stock Exchange requirement for listed companies to have at least one female board member has been a meaningful step forward. And other larger corporations or professional firms are also playing their part. For example, in Wong, we have established delegated D&I committees where we hosted programs for female, and also celebrations for International Women's Day, Mother's Day, etc. And professional associations like CPA Australia, Greater China Division also have our Women in Leadership Committee years ago, and that we continue to raise visibility, build capability, and also create networking opportunities to support female professionals. And this is really important.
Great. And you can see it's making a difference, Karina, in terms of the pipeline into senior leadership?
Definitely.
Great. Chris, I mean, you're a male ally on the panel. Really keen to understand, based on your sort of extensive professional experience, what role men can play in helping to shift some of these barriers, and some examples of things that you've seen and been involved in that have really made a difference.
I hear what the panelists are saying about the role of men in the childcare and responsibilities, and clearly that's critical. Part of the long-term societal solution. I think modelling and taking up these flexible policies is part of it. In an organisational context, I think men at all levels have a role to play about seeing themselves as an active contributor to the solution, about being present in conversations about bias and inclusion and contributing in a constructive way. I think that's all part of it. What I would say, though, is I think those in leadership roles, and we've heard already some of the experience, the stats that Jill, you talked about local government, it's male dominated at the leadership level. So given that the role that men play in leadership, I think they have an extra responsibility because they can influence the careers of women through sponsorship, but more importantly, they can potentially influence at an organisational level. And I do think leaders, male leaders, should see that as part of their role, part of their responsibility. Excuse me. If I can, just one example from that I've tried to do, just to, I guess, illustrate the point. This goes back some time. When I was the CEO, managing partner, CEO of a large law firm in Australia, and I was asked to speak at the launch of the Law Society's NARS report, which is a report into the national attraction and retention of women in the legal profession. And as I was sitting there at that lunch and hearing the data about the terrible statistics at that time, this is more than a dozen years ago, in the legal profession, particularly at the partnership level, I thought, gee, this is not a competitive issue amongst the legal profession. There must be something we can do about this collectively. So when I came back from Canberra, the launch was at the Press Club in Canberra, I sent an email to the managing partners of the other 9 of the 10 largest law firms and said, why don't you come and have lunch at our place and let's have a conversation about it. All 10 of them were men. at that time, so I thought I should have some women there in a conversation on this topic. So I invited a couple of women in senior other legal roles, and we had a great discussion and came up with a bunch of specific initiatives that we worked on collectively across the profession, frankly, because that was the 10 largest law firm, and it turned into what became known as the Managing Partner Diversity Initiative in Australia, and it's morphed into a different form but continues today. And what we did is sort of come up with some practical things around training and education across the profession. Look, that's just an illustration of what can be done, but at an organisational level, I think there's plenty that can be done. And I know things have moved on. And by the way, it was 10 men in that a dozen years ago. I think the majority of the managing partners of the large law firms in Australia now are women. So it's things have moved, but they've still got a long way to go, as we're hearing from the other panelists. But men clearly a big part of the solution, especially given their prevalence in senior leadership roles in organisations.
Thanks, Chris. All right, so we've got barriers. We've got, I guess, initiatives that organisations can undertake to address those barriers. But I guess we are the four of us, excluding you, Chris, we're all female leaders in the accounting and finance profession. I guess as individuals, we've got roles that we can play as well, because I mean, I'd like to say that we've made it into senior leadership positions, and that's not the majority, I would say. So I'm keen to understand from each of you, what you can do as an individual to provide that support for the women coming through and wanting to move to senior leadership roles. So Jill, I might start with you. If you're having conversation with someone who's facing some inequity in their career, what do you say to them to help them overcome those challenges?
Sure. Well, I tell them I know it's not easy to speak out when you face these barriers, and you do have to have that safe space to address it. Personally, I found the older I'm getting, I'm becoming an upstander rather than a bystander. And my tolerance level for inequity is very low. Maybe a menopause symptom, but I have no tolerance when I see anybody being treated unfairly. When I started my career, it was the girl's job to make the boss's tea, to do the kitchen, and people could actually smoke at their desks, right? Yeah, right. But some of us remember those days. Thankfully, things have changed, but not everything has changed. It might be illegal to smoke at your desk, but are we or society still expecting the females to tidy the office kitchen, to empty the dishwasher, to go and get the milk? It's like, is it just embedded in our organizations? Is it a time for us to step up as leaders and say, no, the fridge will not be cleaned every week by the female admin assistant. We will do it as leaders as well. So I think it's about having that safe space for people to step to say they've seen injustices, but it's about us becoming upstanders rather than bystanders as well. And I would also say to try and find a female mentor. Mentors are so important in our careers. And if you can find a mentor that will probably have experienced the same barriers that many people do experience, they will have had their approach to how you may be able to get over them. But also back to kind of what Chris was saying, a male ally is one of the best things we can have up our sleeve, especially in the workforce. So if you have a male ally in your workplace and you feel that you are really being treated not fairly, try and have your allies speak up for you.
Thanks, Jill. Yeah, it's important that the men are in the conversation, and so that's why it's really important that Chris is on this panel today. But we can't do this without the male support, because it's impossible. It's an impossible ask for us. I think we're climbing uphill, very very steep uphill ladder without that support. So Kim, what would you say to someone, a woman who comes to you and says that they don't think the system is designed for them? What's your advice to a young female in particular that's trying to climb that ladder?
I think I'd be asking them what would make a difference, because what makes a difference for one person would be quite different from another. You know, and again, you know, is it a matter of talking to your mentor and going, how do I navigate this particular challenge? Is it a matter of going to your boss and go, I need more flexibility? Or is it going to your partner and going, I need more help?
So just being brave enough to ask the question,
Exactly.
Yeah.
To Jill's point, we've got to stop being bystanders and start standing up.
Yeah. Karina, how does that manifest in Asia? Is it as easy to do that across Asia as it is potentially in Australia, to have sort of some of those braver conversations around what you need to be successful and move through to senior ranks?
I think we have to you know, continuously remind our female colleagues to, you know, to be able to seek support proactively and not carry the pressure or stress silently, because it's not going to work. I'm always happy to share my own experiences with our women colleagues, that they are standing at the crossroads in their careers. And over the years, I have had many conversations, in-depth conversation with those talented female who face difficult career choices, not because they lack ambition or confidence, but because they were balancing between demanding work and family responsibilities. Honestly, I'm a mother of 2 teenage girls. I've gone through all this, and so from time to time, some younger female colleagues will come to me for career or personal advices, and these experiences have reminded me how important it is for leaders to offer genuine encouragement and support, and to take the time to understand our colleagues' concerns beyond the workplace. And when we give a supportive environment, we'll see the result. So I'm happy to see, like, you know, sometimes some women, they, after the conversation, after they see the support at work, they chose to stay, they continue to grow, and ultimately they excel at the very senior levels.
That's great. And Chris, from your perspective, I mean, I know you've got 2 daughters. I know they don't work in the accounting profession, but I imagine they're likely working in professions that also have challenges in senior leadership roles that are dominated by males. So how do you support your daughters in this space to give them confidence that as they progress through their careers, because I know they're still quite young, as they progress through their careers, they've got the confidence to continue to strive and know that there's a support system available to enable that?
Yes, so I have 2 daughters, one aged 21, one aged 24. They are both incredibly independently minded, seriously woke, and they happen to be both big debaters from university days. One's still at university, so they're no shrinking violets. So I'm not sure there's much I can teach them on independence. I think they've nailed that pretty well, and I'm sure that comes in large part from their mum, who's encouraged that of them, and also the school they went to, which a girls' school, and it sort of really encourage that independent thinking. So that's good. So I feel confident that they wouldn't tolerate some of the stuff you spoke about, Jill. That maybe today's generation just takes it, they just won't tolerate it, which I think is good. But that's not to say they're not going to bump up against those challenges. My 24-year-old daughter is gay, so she has a woman, gay. There's diversity challenge, a couple of other, she has another diversity challenge too in the workplace, because she is now in the workplace. And I think I don't need to tell her this because I know she's doing it. It's about seeking out mentors and like-minded souls, finding your community to support you. Ideally, they'll find organisations that are consistent with their set of values and encourage that, and to the extent that they're not, maybe they can try and change that from within a bit, but that's hard. And so ultimately, if they can't change it, and it doesn't resonate, then they need to make that call. I do think, as a general comment, and it's easy for me to say this as a man who's in a leadership position, I do think, though I would observe just from what I read and hear, that workplaces are becoming much more enlightened, but I don't want to diminish some of the real challenges on a day-to-day basis that are faced. And it's great to have a perspective from different parts of the accounting sector on this panel too, because what may be the norm in a very large accounting firm, which has great HR policies and practices, etc., is probably not the case for your suburban or regional practitioner in the accounting space, and so it's a big issue here. So anyway, come back to your question. For my kids, look, I know they're going to face challenges. I'm thanks to Nicole, my wife, I think they're in pretty good shape, but we'll see. That's not to say they're not going to face plenty of challenges.
Yeah, I think you've touched on a good point there, Chris. I mean, and particularly because, again, I was looking at the Workplace Gender Equality Agency's report that's just been released the last couple of days, and that's an Australian-based report, but it's about gender pay gap across organisations in Australia, and we have seen, I guess, significant progress in the big four professional services firms, which is incredible. The results are below partner level, so I don't know what it would look like if you included the partners, but they are getting they're doing quite well with getting females into partnership level now. But they've got the benefit, as you say, Chris, of HR departments that can design programs and initiatives. And Karina, you're obviously a beneficiary of that because you work at EY, and so there's resourcing to support. And so one of the challenges, I guess, is in those smaller firms or in local government or in a small to medium organisation that just doesn't have the HR, the P&C policies that enable that. And so that's where I guess the conversation needs to happen at a broader level in order for you to have a conversation at a smaller level in those organisations. Now, I've got a couple of panel questions, and we were going to leave the panel questions to the end, but I think there's a couple of questions in here that sort of seem relevant to this conversation about what we can do as individuals, and they're about child rearing. So it's that kind of conversation, and one of the questions we got from the audience is how do those with children split your time without feeling like you're always dropping the ball? Can we have it all? And so I'm keen to hear from the panelists on that question. How have you managed all of those challenges while balancing a professional career? Julie, you want to go first?
Yeah, I might add a little bit to that. Yes, I was a mature age student, so I decided to go to university just when I just had my first baby, and yeah, I get that. It's a maternal guilt thing as well. You're studying, you're working, but you want a career, but you're supposed to be looking after the kids. Society says you should be. And I will say, come out of it, the kids are now 25 and 21, and I say to them, did you regret me not being there all the time, or were you happy? And they said, Mum, we are so proud of you of what you have achieved. So please take that away, everybody, that our kids are our family. They love us unconditionally, and that's what they say to me now. They don't say, Mum, you weren't there for that race day, or you weren't there for that awards day. They say, Mum, we're so proud of you and what you've done.
Great. Karina or Kim, any views on this one?
I have two girls now. First one is almost 18. The other one is 15. When they were young, I think more challenges between balancing between work and family, and you just have to set the boundary. And when you're home, then try to set aside maybe an hour or two, before the bedtime to spend time with them, and then once they've gone to bed, then you can work remotely and try to catch up the work. But sometimes I think you can do as much as you can, and also really be conscious of seeking support from other family members, also from work, because you can't do everything by yourself. You just have to get support from others. And also, like, when I'm like, sort of like, at a more senior level, I have more flexibility. I'm more willing to support others with those younger female.
That's great. What about you, Kim?
Well, I have a daughter who's 14 and a son who's 20. Unlike Jill, I went straight to uni straight after school, and I had my children a little later than most. I think every parent, every mother experiences guilt, but this is all tied to those traditional, those societal norms. It's not that it's wrong. It's you have to make the best decision for you and your family.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, obviously, I'm not in the trenches anymore. I've got a 10 and 13-year-old, so there's a little bit of independence, and that has certainly helped me in my career because they're not as needy, I think, at 10 and 13 as they were at, say, 2 and 5. But it kind of links to another question that we've got in the panel is, how do you, what's your support from your partner look like? And I guess I'm lucky that I've got a partner that's got a flexible job as well. And so I think so when we talk about flexible working arrangements, it's not just for women, it's for everyone in the workforce, because the fact that he's got flexibility means that I can lean in when I need to, and then he can lean in when he needs to because I've got flexibility. And so all the policies that we've talked about, I guess traditionally were focused on giving women flexibility, but I think in an organisation to be truly successful, everyone needs to be able to have that flexibility, whether that's because you've got children or you've got pets or you've got caring responsibilities for parents, or even other kind of broader family responsibilities. That flexibility piece is the reason why I've been able to stay in such a senior role, but it goes two ways. And so, but not all jobs have got that much flexibility. And I think that is probably a challenge too. When you've got a partner that works in professional services, there is a bit more of an element of flexibility. It can be challenging, I think, at times when you've got people that need to be, at the construction site or on the shop floor. And so, there's some luck sometimes in what your partners do, but I think flexibility as a general rule is really important across all organisations to enable women and men to be successful. All right, so we are. I've got one more question for each of you, I suppose. It's sort of a bit of a wrap-up question. So we've sort of talked about the barriers. We've talked about systemic barriers. We've talked about some ways to address those barriers. Ways that each of you are, leading from the front, I guess, in each of your organisations to influence that next generation of women to come back through senior leadership. If there was one thing that each of you could identify to immediately accelerate gender equity, what would you like to leave the audience with? And maybe I'll start with you, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, there's no silver bullet here. There's no one thing. It's a myriad of things. I mean, I think one of the things that has made the most impact, and I think it's was reflected in Jill's comment earlier about you were contrasting Victoria local government versus others, and it's the awareness. So it's the tracking and monitoring, and having targets or whatever, at least being aware of on whatever indicators make sense. So. Percentage of people in most senior leadership roles who are women, and so I think the big part of it is just the creating the awareness, tracking, and monitoring. Can I just put in a plug though, Rebecca, and you might want to comment on this on CPA's belonging strategy, which I think is a really. So you're coming to it. I'll leave it to you because you should.
I'll leave it to me.
Architect. Yeah, you're the architect of it. So I'll stop talking now. Then let someone else with.
Awesome. Who wants to jump in?
I'm happy to jump in. I've been talking about flexibility on a day-to-day basis. That makes a huge difference. But I think the focus at a higher level should be on diversity. We've got to hiring managers have to stop hiring people that look and sound and have the same background as they do. There are a pile of studies that show that you get better outcomes with diversity in your teams.
Yeah,
and
very good.
That'll have a huge impact, not just on gender diversity, but but all sorts of diversity.
Yeah, and I think I know in the kind of hiring world now, there's obviously leveraging of technology, and so we also need to be really conscious that any technology that we're using to help with the hiring process is not inbuilt with unconscious bias, which is based on, I guess, history, which is not diverse. So it's a bit of a challenge for us. It's a bit of a watch out, I guess, as we leverage AI to help with the hiring process too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What about you, Karina? One thing.
Because at EY, I'm also responsible for recruitment for my team. So I would suggest starting at the beginning of the talent pipeline. So, for example, set a minimum gender proportion for graduate recruitment. And it's not about just imposing a rigid quota that you need to fill. It's about making sure we intentionally building a balanced pipeline from day one. And as we all know, like graduate intakes shapes the leadership in the future. So if we start with diversity at the entry level, that could somehow minimize the effort in playing the catch up at a later stage.
Great. And Jill, one thing from you.
It's sort of, Chris touched on it. I think we, as organisations, we need to measure our gender equity and make ourselves accountable.
Yes, it gets done, doesn't it? And it is interesting. I mean, obviously that's very Australian centric, and this is a global webinar. But data helps drive decision making, and having proper data that's validated and can be talked about and discussed means that we've got evidence to help with decision making as well. So I totally agree with that as well. All right, and one more final question for all of you is just about a behaviour. So what is one behaviour that you could adopt right now to balance the scales? What can you do personally to adopt a behaviour?
Happy to jump in?
Go, Kim. Yeah.
Give your team flexibility.
Great.
And remember that flexibility looks different for every person. I've seen anything from definitely working from home, early, late starts, part-time. Can I do the school pickup and then get back on? Attending school events or taking aging parents to doctors. There's so many ways flexibility can show itself, and it's if you can give some flexibility to your team to interpret that flexibility as they need, huge difference.
Great. What about you, Chris? One behaviour.
Look, my awareness of and understanding of the diversity challenges in all its forms, so gender, ethnicity, sexuality, I'm on a journey, that's for sure, and I've learned a lot in the last X years, and I continue to learn. So I think, and I'm continually learn from the next generation, particularly my two daughters who I mentioned before. So for me, it's about listening and evolving my views and being receptive to blind spots or look out for blind spots that I unintentionally are maybe introducing bias in what I do, particularly as my role as a leader in this organisation. So for me, it's listening harder.
Excellent. All right, Jill and Karina, one final behaviour from you, and then I think we'll have to wrap it up.
Sure. I think empathy is a big thing for me, and just if people could start having more empathy and understanding that not everybody has it easy in life, not everybody is as lucky as us to have jobs that we're happy in, and people have different struggles going on in the background outside the work life, and need to be supported to achieve their dreams too.
Thanks, Jill.
Yeah.
And what about you, Karina?
I echo what Jill just said, as to engage in supportive and empathetic conversation with women returning from maternity leave or family-related emergency leave. Most women will feel vulnerable during this moment of transition. So instead of assuming their priorities straight away, take the time to ask them what they are doing, how they're doing, what support do they need, how we can help them reintegrate smoothly. And sometimes it's a small thing by offering flexibility for school runs or other ad hoc family commitments. When we offer empathy instead of pressure, it reduces the stress that women can often carry silently and helps them rebuild the momentum. And collectively, every act of support can shift the culture in a very meaningful way.
It's amazing. So it sounds to me, so 3 kind of key things that came out through that. So there's an awareness of a challenge. So we've absolutely got challenge. We're not there yet. We've got gender equity in the profession, but we do not have it in the senior leadership. So we need to be aware that there are still significant challenges impacting women. We have to be empathetic to those challenges. And so we have to listen. As leaders, we've got a significant role to play in listening to the needs of our female workforce that are trying to come through in those senior ranks. And then we have to offer that flexibility, as you said, Kim, to enable them to be successful. And as you say, it could look different depending on who they are, where they're based, what their circumstances are. And so it's about awareness, empathy, and flexibility to support women in those senior roles. All right, well, that's all we have time for with the panel discussion. So I just wanted to thank each of you, incredibly insightful conversation we've had today. So thank you, Chris, Karina, Kim and Jill, for the robust conversations. It is clear that we've made progress, but there's so much more to do. And I think we've got what looks like an incredible senior leadership workforce that are willing and able to do that. I'm proud of this profession. We're all sitting in the accounting profession. I'm really proud to be in this profession, and I'm proud that we've got pathways to enter the profession. And now we need better pathways to enable not just the few, but the many to take on senior leadership roles if they wish to pursue it. At the start of the live stream, I mentioned that this was our first ever Global International Women's Day event. And it is timely, Chris, because we did launch our Belonging Commitment Statement late last year. Karina was on our Council of Presidents last year. This is a product that the Council of Presidents helped to create. It is a statement. It's really important to us as an organisation that we create a culture where people feel safe, respected, valued and connected. And it's a cornerstone of our internal culture here too at CPA Australia. So please jump on the website and check it out. It's a really important statement for us and something we'll use as a guiding light moving forward. There's also many, many more International Women's Day events happening across all of our global divisions. And so please jump online and have a look to see if there's any still available in your location. I know some have already taken place and some are still to come. Having these conversations is really important for us as an organisation, as CPA Australia. We want to debate important topics because they do impact the success and sustainability of our profession. And I just want to thank, again, the panellists for engaging in that debate because it can be challenging at times. We're also focused as an organisation in bringing more global content to our global audience. We're 176,000 members across 100 countries. And so this is a global series that we want to do more global content. So please make sure if you're a member or not a member of CPA, you're connected with us on social media. We've got all the platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and we promote all of our events on those platforms. And if you are a member and the app is available in your region, please download the CPA Australia app. It's your companion. It's a companion in your hand. It has all the events that are listed in your location, and you'll also look at all the events in other locations as well. It's a great way to engage with our content too, in the Black podcasts, articles. And then also make sure you're receiving our newsletters and emails. And so we've got 13 divisions that are doing incredible things on the ground every day for our members. And we do promote a lot of that through newsletters and emails. And so please make sure you've got your preferences set to receiving emails so you know what's going on. Thank you everyone for joining us. Chris, thank you. I know you're CEO, you're a busy man, but I know this was an important topic for you. So thank you very much for joining our panel today. And for everyone who watched us live and for those that watched the recording, thank you for joining in this conversation. And I will now hand back to Holly.
Thanks, Rebecca, and thanks again to all of our panelists, and a big thank you to everyone who's joined us. If you could please scan the QR code in your screen and fill in our short post-event survey. We really appreciate your feedback as it's extremely valuable to CPA Australia to help us deliver better experiences for you. This live stream can be found on our CPA Australia YouTube account should you wish to access the recording. If you enjoyed the live stream, we encourage you to share it with your networks. As a reminder, CPD for this event will not be automatically recorded, so please be sure to fill in your CPD diary accordingly.